HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Chasing Whispers by Eugen Bacon, read by Nene Nwoko. Towards an Afro-irreality, D. Harlan Wilson. When I first read Eugen Bacon's Chasing Whispers, I was at once estranged by the writing and familiar with it. The stories in this collection felt like they belonged in my head even as they escaped me. I remember texting the editor and saying, "I like this book. It reminds me of... me?" Granted, I have a love-hate relationship with my own writing, and I never read a book of mine once I've finished it. All I see are the imperfections, the deficiencies, the unborn ideas and underdeveloped trophies. The same goes for most 21st century fiction. I don't like it. Almost everything I see is what I've seen before, so I turn to previous centuries, where authors not only valued genuine innovation, but made concerted efforts to be original and new. In the 19th and 20th centuries, I see so much writing that challenges me to be an active rather than a passive reader, intellectually and imaginatively. It forces me to engage with the material, whereas contemporary fiction just washes over me like lukewarm bathwater. This is an illusion, of course. Certainly, there are working authors who continue to push boundaries and defy conventions, even as we become less literate, less perceptive, and more unplugged from history, regardless of the chronic informational deluge fed to us on a daily basis from the motherbird of our screens. We live in a science-fictional world distinguished by a terroristic superfluity. Everybody is a de facto talking head and a dancing marionette, and self-awareness is a fairy tale. As for literature, the digital age has relieved the medium of its momentum. The literary novel, for instance, used to be a beacon of culture. Now, it's a special interest venture at best. Some people get upset when I disparage the start of art, literature, and culture at large, but I can't help myself. The image has usurped the flaws of our desires and unconsciousness, relegating the word to a necessary evil. We don't remember how to read. Moby Dick might as well have been written by an alien from another dimension. The depth of Melville's allusions alone is entirely lost on 21st century generations. Likewise, Ulysses had trouble getting published 100 years ago in 1922. It's totally unpublishable today. If nobody knew who Joyce was, even a small press wouldn't touch it. Too long, too complex, above all, too artistic, creative, and intelligent. Melville and Joyce are two of the most recognizable figures in the modern literary canon. They're also two of the whitest figures. The further we go back in literary history, the whiter it gets. Thankfully, times are a-changing, once again. Not fast enough. Worthwhile movements rarely move fast enough. But we're finally starting to march ahead. We need more diversity in our literature. We need to recognize more underrepresented voices, namely authors of color. But that doesn't mean we should turn our backs on canonical authors. The most accomplished writers and readers familiarize themselves with the megatext of art and literature and culture at large. Buried in the garden of the megatext are the seeds of our own identities, and the best versions of ourselves emerge from a well-roundedness of thought and experience. That said, Ulysses and Moby Dick are vast exercises in ennui. Stupidly, I've taught both of these novels in undergraduate college courses, and I'll never do it again. The incomprehension, boredom, and anger they incited in my students reflected my own feelings for my students' textual intolerance and helplessness. But Joyce and Melville are writers who foreground style as a way of seeing. For my part, I don't enjoy reading Ulysses and Moby Dick. I can't stand Ulysses, in fact. But God damn it if Joyce didn't weaponize his imagination. This is exactly what I think of my own fiction in terms of aspiring for originality and the Poundian incentive to make it new. You may not like what I write. I don't even like it half the time. But God damn it if I'm not trying hard to be consistently innovative. I'm not saying I'm Zarathustra. Far from it. What I'm saying is that I don't see many authors trying to make it new. There's this idea that stories and novels must be written a certain way in order to be good, and if they are not written that way, they're bad. Throw a dart at a bookstore, and I guarantee you'll hit a good book written by someone who knows the rules. Most MFA programs, masterclasses, and writing textbooks will provide you with the same rules. The rules are important. The rules must be learned and followed. Failure to learn and follow the rules will result in a no good book and, in most cases, a rejection from the publisher. In short, the rules are the rules. Mind them or go do something else. Eugen Bacon is an exception to the rules, and contemporary literature needs more exceptions. Broadly speaking, the stories in Chasing Whispers are picturesque explorations of minds and bodies that dabble in multiple genres. Foremost among these genres is irrealism. This is what caught my eye when I initially read the book. Irreal narratives combine dreamlike episodes or moments from an absurdist undercurrent in such a way that readers are at once estranged by the writing and familiar with it, which, as I noted in my first sentence, was precisely my experience. But so what? Why estrange readers? Why alienate them in any way? Readers don't like to be alienated. For the most part, they don't want to do any extra work. Our external screens imagine everything for us, showing us the payload in great detail. When we read, we have to show ourselves the payload on our internal screens, making images and sounds in our heads from words alone. Readers want this process to be as easy as possible. If people read at all, they want their words spoon-fed to them, with no nonsense or ambiguity. I understand that impulse, but that's not reality. Daily life is a torrent of nonsense and ambiguity. Listen to the news. Dissect last night's dreams. Think about the finality of death. Talk to an uneducated American. Look at the sky and try to fathom the universe's 200 billion trillion stars. There are more questions than answers, more absurdities than certainties, more untold desires than recycled actions and articulations. Ironically, perhaps, irreal stories have the ability to depict reality better than reality itself because they can account for conscious and unconscious realms simultaneously, imploding objectivity and subjectivity. An effective work of irrealism, in other words, can come closer to representing how one might perceive the real world than a work of realism. And perception is all that matters. Without it, there is no one, no works, no world, no nothing. Everything we see, including our reflections in the mirror and in our dreams, should always be enclosed in quotes, because it's all bullshit. Only our capacity to see and interpret something makes something into something. Irrealism is a thing in itself, but it's also a methodology wherein authors might express themselves and explore motifs intimate to their purview and personal history. Kafka is the touchstone, the epitome of the form as I see it. His variety of irreal fiction thematized the absurdity of bureaucracy and portrayed the many ways in which he felt trapped by institutional antagonists, ranging from his father and family to his job, the culture industry, and even his body. Bacon's Variety is an exploration of her experience as a Black woman in a volatile, often menacing world whose default stance is objectification, racism, misogyny, patriarchy, heteronormativity. In spite of recent movements such as Me Too and Black Lives Matter, this remains the default stance of the real world, and if history teaches us anything about the human stain, it will continue to be the norm for a long time. Bacon draws on science fiction and fantasy as well as irrealism. Many of her decidedly Afrofuturistic stories reminisce of fiction of Nisi Shaw, Nalo Hopkinson, Cherie Renee Thomas, and two of the modern literature's most important figures, Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison. Morrison's work has often been associated with magic realism, but technically that's a regional form that originated in Latin America and has been most effectively rendered by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. To my mind, novels like Beloved, The Bluest Eye, and Song of Solomon exhibit elements of irrealism which has no cultural ties. Whatever the case, Chasing Whispers comfortably situates itself within the tradition of these authors. At the same time, Bacon's voice is unique. These stories have something new and different to say, and they are deeply informed by her life as an African-Australian outsider who has, among other things, clearly endured the entitled assholery of little men. The violence, suffering, and anguish that marks the history of civilization is an invariable product of this assholery, and Bacon illustrates it with as much beauty as truth. In so doing, she enacts the title of this introduction, moving us towards an Afro-irreality that calls attention to the haunted houses of the past, signals a better future, and accomplishes the increasingly rare feat of making it new. Literature has been dying the death for at least half a century now. Authors like Eugen Bacon are the life support organs that keep it alive. Chasing Whispers. Today the house wore Zeta. She felt stretched, necks and elbows tucked into her shawl, fridges too. She was suffocating, and the house's monsters were responsible. Protrusions everywhere, belly buttons, kneecaps, pots, toilets. At her worst point, she was a blindfold, an ill-fitting ski mask over the patio. That was before she turned into a clown costume full of circus in the garage. Worse, the house was shedding sawdust and it stank. No deodorant could fix it. Vacuuming was useless. It was as if the house was spiteful about something. She tried to cheer it up, smiled and twisted so it could fit better inside her shape. But the house grew more necks and corners, bones, teeth, and microwaves into her leotard. She knew it wasn't the house. It was him, Peppo. Touch is an open window and a door ajar. It's a familiar mall, the face of the future. Touch is fire, water, earth, and air. It's a garden full of reflections and dreams. It's an archetype or a metaphor or alchemy. It reminds you of a river or a beach, rain or sunshine. Touch is right here. You've arrived. The press of fingers tells you everything. Everything. And it's simultaneous, marvelous, and not enough. You think of it again and again. Ask what more you want and you cannot say. You don't linger on it because you are not crazy, because touch may be an esplanade, but it's not insurance. She remembers his online profile, Epsom salts. She imagined a soaker, a soother, a calmer, a rejuvenator. Her life was in shambles, aches and sprains, sore muscles everywhere. She wanted Epsom salts, and he was right there, crisp on her screen. The laser focus of his eyes talked to her, only to her. What she felt was not whimsy, but a rush full of edge. He abducted her soul across a screen. She swiped right, even knowing how she always sacrificed in pursuit of love. She messaged him first. She told him she power walked and jogged around trails. She said it was the first crack she'd given this kind of dating. "I don't know what I'm signing up for." "Why not?" he said. "Online's not my thing." "What's a thing?" She didn't know what to answer because, truth was, she didn't have a thing. She was relieved when he immediately asked to be exclusive, to take their discovery offline. His very words. "Yeah, maybe," Zeda said. "It's an ending." "What do you mean?" "You don't need here," he said. "Like online? But I need to know you more before—" "What will we say on chat that you can't see in person?" "And that's better?" she asked. He went silent. 3 days, 4 hours and 36 seconds. She had given up on him, was contemplating swiping right on another hunk, or some 666, when Purple resurfaced. "It's molecular affinity, you and me both. Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Meet at your house." "You don't know where I live." "That's why you'll tell me." She did. Their physical reaction to each other was spontaneous, binding, something crystallized, a release of energy in the compound of their copulating selves. It informed the thermodynamics of their relationship. Every morn, she woke up sapped, as if overnight he'd siphoned her energy. He was all bouncy, laser eyes hypnotic. She puts herself in the bath, fills it with water, more hot than cold. She doesn't touch the soap, doesn't touch the water. Not with her fingers, no. Just watches it rise to her stomach, to her knees, her nose. She nearly lets it swallow her head. Flood it with calm. A whale is swelling. It'll explode like a bomb. She stays silent. An ogre locked inside those onyx eyes and platinum teeth. He reeked worse than a sewer. It got progressively worse each passing day, as though suppressant magic was waning. When did her knowing start? Did she grow weary when he walked into the living room and a spurt of perfume sprinkled on a carcass hit Zeda's nose? Was it when he smiled across the table at dinner under candle-lit chandeliers one night, and a bruise of green moss snailed from the corners of his closing mouth? Perhaps it was when they were walking in the park that autumn, past the gate and its sign that announced new closing times. There was a sweet scent of crushed fruit, golden leaves underfoot, but she wished for spring. She longed for the limey smell of freshly mowed grass, the velvety green of brand new leaves. It happened without warning. Purple's chest pushed away from his body as if escaping his hips. She didn't know how to feel as he hunched, hobbled and shuffled all the way home. That night, sleep abandoned her. She opened her eyes to an intolerable pang and saw the melt of Peppo's face right there on her bed, bubbling, blubbering, an ooze of bile. She doesn't know how she slept, but she finally did. She woke to the noise of her neighbor's building works, now a jackhammer, now a drill. She was frightened to get up, to pick up her phone and call in sick at work, for that is what she felt. Sick. The walls of her world loosened and imprisoned. Hell entered the hollow in her gut. Pepo didn't speak a word. Nothing decipherable anyways. Just whispers she couldn't make out. Nor was she sure they came from him. He gobbled her terror, became more disjoined. Sometimes he was a shapeless whirl, still reeking, always whispering, swirling about the house, obscure to her trauma. When his face fell, it was never in afterthought. It was deliberate, the way his nose melted and ran down his chin. One day, he looked at her in a way that said he knew that she knew. She turns off the faucet, and when she speaks, it's 2 words in a voice of infinity, in a torrent of seas and a destination she doesn't know. Yes, mother. After her father left, pieces of her childhood came and went. Today, she remembers when she was 5. Her bladder was a balloon swollen with water, near leaking. She burst into the bathroom and stopped. He sat there, naked, her father, Baba. His gaze, at first startled, then swelled with adoration, like she was his most favorite. The sound from his throat reminded her of the mewl of a kitten. She remembered the fur. It was everywhere. It slimed down his face, slopped into the tub, and the water gurgled. It overflowed, clumps of it sodden on the floor, mingled with her panic and shame. It was her mother who lifted her from the sludge of sopping fur and her own pee. Later she heard voices, bellows than whispers. It was her father's neck and his face, as if stretched from elsewhere, at the door of her bedroom, a deep and terrible sadness in his eyes. That's all she remembers of him now. Days after he was gone, she wondered if he had a stroke and Mom secretly buried him in the backyard. Zeda remembered Joel at work, how he purred one day and she looked over the partition, and his head was a blob. She looked again and he was a hairless bird full of clots holding a sewer. She minded that, and his star-nosed face, bulging eyes and saber tooth. How was it no one else noticed? She hadn't spoken to her mother in... what? She couldn't remember. Memory failed since her father, even more since meeting Pepo. Yet, she lifted the phone and dialed without looking up contacts. Mom? This is a surprise, innit? All these years. What you want? Mom, what happened to Baba? She doesn't know why these first words after all that time. What's Baba? The silence between them. And then her mother, a stranger on the line, said, "The separation tree. Find it." The what? It's everywhere. You just have to find it, don't ya? Yes, Mother. And god-awful nothingness overwhelmed the phone. The whispers are a brush of bottles and blurs, keys and tingles gathering speed around her ears. They rub against her skin, rotting camel hair imprinting bile green images and after images of recursive disbelief in the shape of intestines. It's hard to tell why the sludge of black mud is streaming behind her eyes. So she lies to herself that it's a dimension as the water goes cold. A separation tree? She looked it up online, found there was a huge and ancient river red gum now dead in the Royal Botanical Gardens. It had a historic significance in 1850 to celebrate Victoria's separation as a colony from New South Wales. She read about vandals ring-barking a 400-year-old tree. News articles went on and on about the lopping, sculpting, and final placking of the age-old red gum. Web page after page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next. At last, she found text burrowed like a secret, halfway down the 11th page of online search results. A separation tree is a special tree that lifts the seeing from a human whisperer to whom jinns present themselves. Aligned with phases of the moon, jinns will sometimes lift their glamour and reveal themselves to a whisperer who may be a person or an animal. Whispering is a hereditary trait. A whisperer, fatigued with the seeing, may dispel of it through a separation tree that makes itself known to the whisperer. Then she started noticing the trees, like the stumpy stout one along her tram ride to work. Its leaves looked like a bad haircut, and the reaching tree, no matter how far she got, it kept nearing. She finally brought herself to touch its back, expecting what? A spark? A zing? Nothing happened. She scratched off a piece of its bark, put it on her tongue. It tasted of wintergreen, worse when she chewed it and it released a bitter sawdust. Her stomach hurt and she had the runs. That's all that happened. Nothing eldritch. So she was wary with the gnarly, whorly thing halfway down the botanical gardens toward the Nymphea Lily Lake. That one came and went many times in her dreams. On an alpine trail one weekend, miles out from civilization, she power walked to avoid getting a stroke. There, she saw the monster oak swollen into a pregnant mud hut with a black hole for a door. Oh, she also saw the cobra tree, dotted with tiny black eyes and a dangle of forked tongues, branches that slithered towards her in the wind, and she squealed. She did stop by the hugger tree along the gorge walk, but its scaly bark scratched her cheek. She ignored the cadaver tree, arms akimbo, tits out, a brush between its legs. But she did look at the hair-down witch tree that first startled, before it pulled your gaze and you felt sage, stupid, or both. Neither one of those trees was a separation tree. She would know if it were, wouldn't she? She didn't know. She tried telling Pepo about the trees, but all he noticed were the dogs, the flappy-eared Labrador that cocked its head, then fawn-lopped to chase a twirling leaf. The red terrier, all stocky and muscle, it growled when Pepo passed the girl owner, all nose and thumbs in her smartphone. The German Shepherd puppy was not at all militant, simply soft and curious, and Zeda wanted to pet it. It was okay to notice dogs. What worried was Pepo's hungry look at each doggo, like he wanted to eat it, even the black pug and its snotty muzzle face. Despite Pepo's deforming, his starving looks at the dogs, she begged and wailed as he left, clung to his calf, but it slimed in her hands, snailed over his abandoned moccasin on her doormat to join his patting self at the gate. Overnight, he'd stripped Zeda's heart to an expiration date, carpeted her devotion with a second-hand rug burrowed with dust, whirled with mold. The fungi came in the color of an aurora that followed the pattern of her grief. She sat in silence at the folding table in her kitchen after he left. The house felt empty, whitewashed. She sat in that kitchen until the whitewash dimmed and his moccasin outside the door obscured. She's on an island again, one in which something's broken. It could be a promise, not a collective. It's a country or a coat, a shop sealed up with planks. She swallows and wonders what's been handed down, mother to daughter since she dropped out of the womb. She feels at gunpoint or needle.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?